Now it's at this point, and I can see why, this is the reason why I want to bring John O'Connor in, because John O'Connor is the author of the books I previously showed you, The Mysteries of Watergate. We'll talk a little bit about that, and Postgate. And now, because Donald Trump is, and welcome back to the Adult in the Room podcast, by the way, John, thank you so much for doing this. I want to find out from you where you think Trump is now in his hunt for the hunters. The hunted is now switched to the hunted.
Right. Victoria, this is the most impactful and important scandal in American history. It started out, as you know, as being a hunt of Donald Trump and was supposed to be a huge scandal because he was consorting and colluding with one of our worst enemies, Vladimir Putin, not only hurting us in a national security perspective, but also influencing an election. So those two values, protecting our people and protecting our democratic institutions, were both threatened by Donald Trump, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Now it turns out, of course, the exact opposite happened. This was a massive dirty trick that started out with Hillary Clinton falsely claiming a hack and leak operation to justify or to cover up, really, and to take the spotlight off of the emails that WikiLeaks was going to leak that showed that she cheated Bernie Sanders through the DNC. It was a massive cheating of Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
That was what she was worried about, because if her coalition fell apart, she was going to lose the election. So she made up this story, had the Steele dossier secretly commissioned, trying to keep her fingerprints off of it, to say that there was this massive conspiracy. But enlisted in this was also, she couldn't stop there and make it a campaign dirty trick. She had to involve our intelligence agencies. And the scary thing is that John Brennan and the CIA and James Comey and the FBI readily jumped in, without a doubt. They were eager to jump in and help her.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started this whole Crossfire Hurricane thing based upon, in part, the false Steele dossier, the false story coming from Clinton's campaign about this being a hack.
Yes.
By Putin, as opposed to an internal leak, an internal download by a disaffected Bernie bro, which is what it was. But rather than admitting that that's what happened, they said, oh no, this embarrassing stuff that's going to come out and hurt Hillary Clinton is a result of a nasty conspiracy by Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. All the Democrats were appropriately shocked. Hillary gets the nomination. Nobody thinks about cheating Bernie. Now, it didn't end there. If it ended there, we might say, okay, it's a dirty trick that didn't go well. But what happened was we had this Russian intelligence. You just showed us, Victoria, the White House evidence that was right there all the time about this being intelligence, and that Russia, very clearly, Russia had nothing to do with this, did not hack,
Right.
and had a very little minor, kind of almost trifling influence, as did every other country that might send a few bots over. And as we do, by the way, with other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So this had, but they knew that. The FBI knew it. John Brennan knew it. And so before we get to that document that you just showed, John Brennan reported this to Barack Obama in an Oval Office meeting on July 28, 2016. They all knew this was phony. Now, it turns out you just showed us the intelligence backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
But he reported those conclusions with Comey in the room. So Comey knew it, Obama knew it, Susan Rice knew it. They're all there in the meeting. Now comes time, Trump, they start the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which is based upon false statements to the FISA court. Now we have our intelligence agencies getting into a phony, poorly predicated counterintelligence investigation, trying
non-predicated.
I would say that non-predicated.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what John Durham said.
Yes, I would say falsely predicated. Not only not predicated, but they weren't even truthful about the weak predication. They've made it up. It was false. And even the falsities weren't much. So then comes the election. Trump wins it. Now, this is what you're talking about. This is the key here. Because up to this point, if it is true, if there is an intelligence community assessment that really says, my gosh, Putin really did hack and leak. Now, what that does is that sort of whitewashes all the previous wrongs that I talked about.
Yep.
If the intelligence community truthfully believes that this happened, now you can't really blame Hillary, even if she thought she was lying. You can't blame other people. The fact is, the intelligence professionals, if you believe the ICA, said, yes, it is a hack and leak. It was done by Putin to help Trump. So it justifies everything. But lo and behold, as you pointed out, that intelligence community assessment was exactly the opposite. If the truth were told, everything that had happened before would fall to nothing. And frankly, nobody would have known any difference. It would have just died a borning. But they weren't happy with that, about this whole thing, just where people would say, oh, well, it really didn't pan out. No big deal. Let's all go about our business.
Yeah.
That's what should have happened. Even after all this dishonesty, if we had an intelligent and honest ICA. But now that we have a dishonest one, now what happens?
Compounds
Next
problem.
meeting, and now I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit, Victoria. January 5th, 2017, James Comey, Susan Rice, Obama, they're sitting around the Oval Office. Comey says, in so many words, he's not going to tell Trump all about the details of the Russiagate investigation. He's going to keep him in the dark, which leads Susan Rice later on to write a cover your flanks memo.
Yes.
But the fact is, they knew that now, in addition to all the falsity, now Obama has commissioned a false ICA report saying there was a hack and leak. Now they all know that Comey is going to take this falsity and continue to undermine Trump while defrauding Trump. He's the president, he's the commander in chief. He has a right to every bit of intelligence. It's like, oh, we're not going to tell Roosevelt what the Nazis are doing. Of course, you've got to tell the commander in chief of any national security incident. So what happens is they not only have a false community assessment, but they also conspire to deprive Trump of knowledge about this, while Comey and his group and Andrew McCabe, these sneaky little guys, are spying on him, recording what he says, writing memos, trying to figure out how to get him for some kind of obstructive behavior. Comey is playing with him like a cat with a mouse and seeing if he can get Trump to erupt or lie or whatever. So that's basically the story. We all know how it ends. Nothing happens from it. But this whole thing that is now coming out is so huge when you imagine that our intelligence agencies were corrupted, our campaign was corrupted, the Oval Office was corrupted, all to get a guy. And here's now, why did they go to this trouble? Because they knew from their polling that Trump had this perch and this capture of the electorate that was hard to stop. This whole thing was to try to minimize the Trump wave and to try to keep that middle range of the electorate that doesn't really look at things very closely, fool them, and keep power. And so it was a really true perversion of our democracy. They knew what was up. They knew the game was up, and this whole thing was rigged in favor of the Democrats, and they wanted to keep rigging it. And so what we've got is now today, 2025, Victoria, we're just putting together that last piece of the puzzle. I had always looked at that intelligence community assessment and I thought, I can't believe they bought off on this. I blamed it on the partisanship of three of the four agencies.
Sure.
Comey and Brennan, of course, CIA and FBI. And then the DNI, James Clapper, was on board. And the only guy that really came out publicly and said, well, I have low confidence is Mike Rogers of the NSA.
Right.
And so I thought, well, and everybody thought, well, Rogers is just some weird guy, but the real cool guys know that there's a hack and leak and a Trump, Putin, Russian collusion conspiracy.
Alpha bag.
Think about that. Now, here we are 9 years after this thing starts. 9 years, Victoria, over 9 years since the falsity has started. And we're just now getting to the point where we understand every piece of it. And there's no longer this ICA that everybody can use as a shield. Now, you said it. The best I've heard of this is the hunted becomes the hunter with this thing. This
right.
is the piece that has been missing, that up to now, there's been sort of a little roadblock anytime you want to go after what it looks like sneaky lying people. Now that roadblock has been removed, the shield is now a sword against them, and it is one that is a devastating sword because that itself is a perversion of our system. Here they are, you read the New York Times, oh, democracy is threatened, our whole country is threatened by Trump. No,
Yeah.
we know where the threat is. There's no doubt about it. Look at this. Everything has been perverted on this. Three elections have been affected by it.
That's right.
So what do you say about that? And think of all the harm that came from Joe Biden's administration. Already today, people listening to this, the inflation is down at a normal deal, but the rises have already occurred. We're still paying too much for eggs and potatoes.
That's right.
Those things, it's going to take us a long time to get those back. Our national wealth has gone down. Our security, our border security, look at Ukraine. Who did that one? Did Trump do that? No. So you go down the line, we're still paying the price for this, Victoria. And I hope we get out of this, with everything intact. And I think it looks like we can edge out of it. But one of the things we need to do is really tell the American public the story, chapter and verse. I've tried to put this together in some articles I've written. Actually, I've been writing about it now for about 7 or 8 years. And this last piece is the one that I didn't have. And now that I've got that, I've been writing about it some more. So we have to do something. Thank God we have people like you that are not brain dead. You notice that the major media are not covering this after years of covering up everything. So,
yeah, all of a sudden, because it makes them look bad, because they couldn't have been able to do this information op, which is what this was, without the help of the media. In fact, the media were written into the plan because they had the certain reporters that they were going to seed the story with. And those indeed were the one guy from Mother Jones, the guy from Yahoo News, who used to work for Newsweek, and one more. I'll think of it in a second.
yeah.
So they had their, the Ken Delanians of the world, where they're willing to just seed these things because to do otherwise would mean that the story would not gain any traction. They had to, Jim Comey on that document I've been showing, Jim Comey actually says, I'm not going to go along with the previous ICA because, well, he doesn't even actually say because, I will not ratify that. So he's putting the full weight of his office behind changing the intelligence community estimate or the assessment. So, I mean, see, he was in it up to his eyeballs. But, I remember you, of course, are a Watergate expert, former federal prosecutor. This guy's deep throats, former attorney. And so you know whereof you speak. We have smoking gun tape implicates president in obstructing justice. President, I'll just say it, Obama admits role in cover-up. Transcripts show that Obama ordered CIA to block FBI's probe into Russia collusion. Those are, of course, not real headlines. Those are headlines from the Watergate era, where we find out that it used to be kind of a big deal if the president ordered a cover-up or had at least passing knowledge of said cover-up. But here is Obama. We've got minutes of the meeting. We've got handwritten notes by John Brennan. And we've got people who are only willing to throw in if the president gets his way. It's been memorialized, articulated. Susan Rice is lying like a rug when she said it was by the book. Of course it wasn't. So please take it away on how important the cover-up is, because you are an expert.
You just said it. Like Watergate, a lot of this depends upon the media. And in this case, right from the start, Hillary Clinton's campaign understood that this was a media battle. And Jennifer Palmieri said, we've been having trouble. Our mission is to have the press understand that this is really something that we have trouble processing, that not only was was this information hacked and leaked, but it was done by Vladimir Putin in league with Donald Trump. Isn't that terrible? They knew the media had to be involved. So that was a big deal. Then, of course, they also were colluding with Comey, and Comey was right there with him doing what the campaign wanted all along. Now, let's compare that to Watergate. What was the terrible cover up in Watergate? It was that, and this is a silly little John Dean's suggestion. Richard Nixon did not want one of his donors, Dwayne Andreas of Arthur Midland Daniels, to be outed as a Republican contributor because he was a nominal Democrat. So he wanted to spare his friend the embarrassment of knowing he contributed to the campaign. There was nothing wrong with it. But if the FBI investigated the so-called Mexican money trail, where the burglars are getting their money and washing it, then Andreas would come out as a Republican contributor. So Nixon said, see if you can shut down, have the CIA tell the FBI to get down on the Mexican money trail. It had no bearing on who was responsible for the burglary, because it was very clear the money came from the White House, from the campaign. So the fact that it's washed in Mexico and who made the contributions is of no moment. But Nixon didn't want that to come out. It wasn't going to shut down the investigation. But the Washington Post, this was a big deal. Oh, the president's trying to cover up Watergate. Well, technically he did. I mean, I'm a prosecutor. I know that what he did was technically obstruction. I'd be ashamed to bring that case as an obstruction case myself if I were a prosecutor, but nonetheless, it's obstruction. I acknowledge that. But then you compare it today, where the FBI's, in that case, the FBI was honest. The CIA was a messenger from Nixon. The CIA was honest. FBI was honest. In this case, the FBI and the CIA are carrying Obama's and Clinton's water to be part of the cover-up. Our intelligence and law enforcement agencies are part of the cover-up, and they are engaging the media. They're engaging the media. And that's what Christopher Steele is doing. That's what the White House is doing. That's what Clinton's doing. Brennan and Clapper become spokesman for the MSNBC, I believe. They get hired by. All this is all of them working together to get to do in Trump. This is really scary. So the media is clearly part of this. And that's the thing to me that's scary. Remember, after Watergate, the media lauded themselves as being these watchdogs. We're going to make sure everything's clean and fair and right and proper. Well, guess what? That only applies to one side of the equation. It's not about their own skirts and about the wonderful, wonderful Democrats out there. So this is really a tremendous perversion of our system. Watergate is really child's play. We're a very credulous nation at the time. Everybody's on the up and up until that point. Everybody wants to believe that the president is perfect. We believe the Washington Post. I got to say, although I was a real student of Watergate and a prosecutor, I went right along with it. I thought the case had been made that Nixon had to go. I was there actually outside the White House gates with a bunch of junior prosecutors when Nixon took off. It was a proud day for us. We thought the rule of law had prevailed and that the president wasn't going to get away with everything. And guess what? I'm embarrassed about that. I'm embarrassed that I didn't figure it out. Other people didn't figure it out. And that's why I wrote the book Postgate. I talk about how the Post fooled us all in Watergate. And now we've got a much...
Read this book.
Yeah,
read this book.
Yeah, you got to read that book. But if look, if you want to make money as a writer, you start out a small fortune. You start out with a large fortune. So I'm not here to make money with that.
Right.
Okay, but this is just so amazing that and we were so credulous back then.
Yeah.
And today today, none of this would have happened. The FBI and the CIA would not have turned partisan unless they knew they were covered.
Yeah.
And they knew they were covered by the media. The media not only helped them politically, but then gives them jobs. Where did George Stephanopoulos come from? You know, you see there's this revolving door between the Democrats and the media, and everybody covers each other and they help each other out. And so what's happening is our democracy is really being hijacked by these folks. And this is the first time. Now, you notice there's a breathtaking silence from the left media about this thing that's coming out. This is a huge scandal. There's been nothing like it. And, there have been people, saying for years that it's just, oh, these right-wing people claim that there's something dirty here about what's happened. Well, we know there is. I mean, it's now in black and white that it's just terrible. And we don't have to make inferences like I was asking people to make common sense inference. Now it's just black and white. Now you don't even need inferences for this, Victoria.
Barack Obama ordered the cover up. Yes?
Well, he ordered the last version of it. It was started going pretty well. I mean, Hillary started it, Comey gets in, and Obama's in on it by July 28th, 2016. I've got to tell you that. He's in on it.
Here he is. Here's Obama. I'm going to just play this. Here's Obama talking about things he knows are not true. And I think this is a 2018 one.
Cozying up to Russia? What happened to the Republican Party? Its central organizing principle in foreign policy was the fight against communism, and now they're cozying up to the former head of the KGB, actively blocking legislation that would defend our elections from Russian attack. What happened? Seem utterly unwilling to find the backbone to safeguard the institutions that make our democracy work. I'm here to tell you that you should still be concerned with our current course and should still want to see a restoration of honesty and decency and lawfulness in our government. It should not be Democratic or Republican. It should not be a partisan issue to say that we do not pressure the Attorney General or the FBI to use the criminal justice system as a cudgel to punish our political opponents. And the closer that we get to Election Day, the more those invested.
Okay. I could go on, but I won't. I mean, let's at some point in this tape, it's another minute, and he talks about how the emails were hacked, and how the election was hacked, and he knows that didn't happen. He in fact knows it so much that he ordered the intelligence assessment to tweak it so it at least introduced the idea that it was the Russians were really trying to help Donald Trump.
Let me add to something, Victoria, which is probably an unnecessary addition to all this dishonesty. But if you look at the Steele dossier, which was meant to hurt Trump, remember the whole idea of the dossier is by Clinton to hurt Trump.
Yeah. The
dossier itself, I just wrote down what Obama just said. The Republicans are cozying up to the former head of the KGB. That is a man named Vyacheslav Trubnikov. He was one of the guys that, according to Igor Danchenko, who wrote the Steele dossier, he was one of the sources that helped to make up this thing. In other words, Putin's men were helping Clinton get to Trump. The Russians were actually invested in this. Christopher Steele was an agent of Oleg Deripaska, an aluminum magnate that's a friend of
Hunter Biden.
Putin's. Hunter Biden. You have Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, and Glenn Simpson is a retainer of Denis Ketsev, who's the aluminum oligarch, and at the same time hired to help Putin in the Magnitsky Act litigation here. So you got Igor Danchenko, who's a spy, Olga Galkina, who's a spy, Charles Dolan, who's the Russian PR agent registered as same with the United States government. All of these are Russian agents, friends of Putin, that are helping Clinton get Trump. And now, but Obama knows this. He knows this, and he knows that the Steele dossier is phony, and and Hillary is using Russian people, Russian friends of Putin. And listen, if this really were a Putin-Trump conspiracy, all those people would be dead now because they would be uncovering what happened to Putin. They're not. Putin laughed about it, I'm sure, okayed this to occur. That's how this Russian intelligence came out, that the Russians knew. That's how the Russians knew about this plan by Hillary, because there are a lot of Russians involved in it. So you can't make this up. And so now, years later, Obama's out there saying, oh, the Republicans were cozying up to the Russians. No, Clinton, who got $135 million in the Clinton Foundation, who sold dual-use technology to Skolkovo in Russia, and her supporters got money. And she got money for selling uranium-1 for approving that. She was in league with the Russians. The Russians helped her with this whole Christopher Steele deal, and we're going to help her get elected. Olga Galkina, the Russian spy who helped Igor Danchenko, a suspected Russian spy, Olga Galkina in her emails is bragging to people that once Hillary gets elected, she's got a spot in the State Department. When the FBI starts working with the Mueller team, and as part of the Mueller team, their main source in things is Igor Danchenko, who's been pretty clearly shown to be a Russian spy, maybe not beyond a reasonable doubt, but people, it's obvious as the nose on your face that
he'd been previously investigated in 2008 for being a Russian spy.
Right. He approached two people at the Brookings Institution and offered them money when they go to the State Department to give him information.
One of whom wasn't it who had something to do with the Ukraine phone call, who gave testimony against Donald Trump for making a faux pas of some sort, who also worked at the Brookings Institution alongside the Russian spy.
That's right. That's right. And it's amazing how many of these people are aligned together on this, but they all have something in common. They know that they're all taking care of each other, they're lying together, and they also know that the media is not going to bust them. The only way people will know about this, you see, they're still hoping today that if you and I are talking about this, Victoria, that hopefully our play will be limited here. And it's our burden, so to speak, to let people know. And I think what's happening now is more and more people are getting savvy. More and more people are listening to independent podcasts. They're not getting all their information from CNN and MSNBC. Their viewership is dropping like a rock. So I think the time of reckoning is coming because independent minds are able to speak, and the government, we're getting behind the government curtain here. That's one of the things. If Trump had not been elected, well, first of all, if he had not been elected in 2016, we wouldn't have known any of this. We know that. That would have been good. If Trump hadn't been elected in 2024, we wouldn't have known this second chapter here. So it's just by a very narrow whisker of, the idiocy of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Thank God we're in this position where we can tell the American people what's been going on. And only by doing this are we going to be able to clean our house and straighten things up. This is incredible that this happens. And will we be able to force the major media? I don't expect everybody to just sing off my song sheet. I expect them to discuss things like democratic citizens so that people can hear the back and forth. I'm convinced the truth's going to win. I just want to see the truth debated, which is what our country is founded on, the debate of opposing sides. But right now, they're still trying to cover this up. And I get the New Yorker. I read everything I can get my hands off from all sides of opinion. And I was sick of getting articles in the New Yorker about how somebody in Kazakhstan knew somebody in Georgia that knows somebody in Moscow that might have known Trump, and they get, and they get Pulitzer prizes for that. Now, what about a little Johnny O'Connor? Now I'm telling what really has happened, and they try to, shut me out and shut Victoria Taft out. Oh, you're a person that they want to shut out. So I think it's interesting because I think we can get the story out, Victoria, and I think it's coming out now with Tulsi Gabbard. Thank God for
Hmm.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And would you like to see all of the prizes and the lucite blocks and the big trophies that the media have gotten over the years for receiving leaks from the intelligence community, and putting it in writing and or broadcasting it and getting prizes for it given back?
Yeah, there ought to be, I don't know what it is. There ought to be like a negative prize for people who withheld stuff or lied about it when they knew different. And, maybe it should be a scarlet L for liar that we should make people wear around along with their. Uh, I think Karl Rove did an opinion piece the other day, and he thought that the media should be wearing gilded lead robes like the hypocrites in the eighth circle of hell. We've got to look at our circles of hell as to what the remedy should be for these people that have lied to us for so long.
Take away their paychecks, I guess. Well, John O'Connor, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on again and talking about this and then comparing and contrasting. It sounds like you are right there. I mean, where I am, you know far more detail about what's gone on in the Russia collusion thing, and of course, you know every jot and tittle of what happened in the Watergate affair, and how it was a CIA op.
That's
At least some
another
of it.
thing. That's another thing. Watergate was a CIA op, and they got away with it mainly because the Post cared more about hating Republicans than about exposing CIA intrigue and infiltration of the White House. To them, it was much more important to get their political enemies than tell a very disturbing truth about CIA infiltration of the White House. So they kept that one under wraps. They concealed a lot. They not only didn't tell the truth, they concealed a lot. And now that's what I think Watergate's legacy is. And that's when you read Postgate, the readers will see that that is really what was born out of Watergate. It wasn't truth, justice, and the American way. It was something far, far different. What terrible things are born here.
Yeah. Lots more to talk about with respect to this national security issues, how you can be targeted for investigation and you're just, it's just a national security thing. It's not a big deal. It's not a criminal investigation. And then all of a sudden you're a target, and all the chicanery that was used to get people around Trump, the lying and everything else that went with it. And I appreciate you coming on. I really do. Thanks
Well,
again.
Victoria, it's great, and I hope you keep up on this. It's great that you're strong on it. So anytime you need my help, I'm here
Oh,
for you.
thank you. I appreciate it. You know I'm going to hit you up on that, right? It's going to happen. It's going
I
to
love it.
happen.
I love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much,
Sure.
John O'Connor, the author of Postgate, The Mysteries of Watergate, and he's got podcasts that correlate to these two books. So you probably want to look those up wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, I think that's enough. On a Thursday, I think it's enough for now. I'm not going to let this up because Watergate changed the media, which changed the culture, which changed our reality, which changed everything. It happened bit by bit by bit, and it corroded and corrupted the media. And ethics went out the window as long as you got somebody's scalp. That's no way to run a country or a media.